Hi and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 14 years and am the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. So gorgeous listener, how are you doing this week? How's your January shaping up so far? Have you been thinking about creating your own manifesto after last week's episode? I'm so curious about everyone's unique visions, the world you'd like to live in. As you know, I've already created my manifesto, so over the past week I've surfed the New Year wave by completing the Year Compass and setting myself some sewing goals. If you haven't already heard of the free Year Compass worksheet, it's available at yearcompass.com, and it's designed to help you analyse the previous year as you experienced it and put it to bed, then figure out what you want from the year ahead. You don't come out with a super detailed plan, but I did find it a useful exercise and it gave me some insights that I hadn't previously considered. As I say, I've also been setting my personal sewing goals for 2023. I've got 4, and they are to keep working through my fabric stash, making the contents into lovely, useful items. I plan to help myself do that by restricting my purchases of new fabric. Last year, I limited myself to 6 pieces of new fabric for myself for the year. That helped me use 27 pieces from my stash over the course of last year. This year, I'm upping the lengths of new fabric purchases to 8 because I could do with replacing some basics this year, including jeans and pyjamas. Secondly, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I've recently adopted the strategy to make or alter an item in between each from scratch project. I've decided to make this an official goal for the entire year, so I'll be using the hashtag #MakeOneMendOne on Instagram, and there's a few others also doing something similar, so why not consider joining us? Thirdly, I'm going to be making a concerted effort to teach my kids some specific sewing skills and techniques this year. I think I've modelled to them that sewing is fun pretty well, and my daughter in particular is really into dabbling with fabric and my sewing machine. But now I feel like it's time to share some more technical information with her so that it will really help her make her ideas a reality more successfully. Lastly, I'm going to continue to find fun and useful ways to sew with scraps and leftovers. Like most sewers who don't chuck their scraps in the bin, I have a large collection myself, and it can feel a bit overwhelming at times. I honestly believe that making use of as much of our fabric as possible is really important. So part of this goal is to actively show people what a great resource scraps and leftovers are. And I've actually decided to let go of a couple of sewing-related activities this year also. So after over 5 years of posting consecutive monthly blog posts for my Free Pattern Friday blog post series, I've decided to knock it on the head for a while. If you haven't heard of this, it's where I road test and review a free sewing pattern or tutorial, and I post about it on my Sozo blog on the first Friday of every month. So the reason why I'm stopping for a while is that I only ever want to be sewing things that I am genuinely excited to make or can see that will be a useful item to have. For the first time in all those years, there just aren't things that I really want to make straight away using a free pattern or tutorial. It would just be sewing for the sake of making content, and I never want to do that. It's not a sustainable approach, plus my making time is limited, so I want to spend it on projects that I'm revved to work on. I'm struggling a bit with the decision, however, because I've currently got a chain of 54 blog posts, and I find it hard to walk away from habits like that, you know. But I know it's the right decision for now, and I will definitely be resurrecting it again towards the summer. I'm super proud of the resource that I've created, however, and I know it will be useful for people for years to come. The other goal that I'm letting go of after more than 2 years is my personal goal to sew one piece of my stash every 2 weeks. This has been a really fun challenge, and it's helped me loads with turning my stash into useful wearable things. But this goal is just no longer serving me at the moment either. Anyways, I would love to hear your sewing related goals for the year and any manifestos or your visions, missions, intentions or anything else you'd like to share. Please email me, zoe@checkyourthread.com, or find me at checkyourthread on Instagram. Or for the personal sewing goals stuff, I've been discussing that on my personal Instagram account at sozoblog. So please head over there if you'd care to share and join in that discussion. So onward! This week, I get to thank 4 wonderful souls, Chrissy, Maria, Clayton and Anna, for signing up to support Check Your Thread via Patreon. Thank you so much. If you'd like to help keep Check Your Thread popping up in your podcast feed throughout 2023, please head to patreon.com/checkyourthread or find the link in the show notes or on the website checkyourthread.com to find out how to do so. Spoiler alert, it is really easy and quick to sign up. Right, so let's get on with today's episode. It's a solo episode that I've put a ton of work into because I really wanted to create a valuable resource that will offer help to lots of people for years to come. It's all about how to future-proof our sewing projects so that the garments we make can be worn for years to come by accommodating body fluctuations. We all experience changes in our shape and size over time, and I don't think we should suffer discomfort or have whole sections of our wardrobes off limits at times when we're bigger or more bloated. In this one, I've researched and mentioned heaps of sewing patterns that illustrate the tactics and approaches that I've uncovered. I've gone to great lengths to add links to every damn pattern I've mentioned, including what measurement each pattern goes up to, and links to both versions if it's a pattern that's available in a couple of size ranges. There's also a bunch of images there as well. So don't worry about scribbling down anything that piques your interest. Just head to the show notes for this and every episode at checkyourthread.com. Just need to mention one errata. I messed up the Instagram handle of amazing listener Heina Rangi. It's actually at Duck Goes Oink, not Pig Goes Oink, as I think I said in the episode. Sorry, Heina Rangi. If you find this episode interesting or useful, please share it with a sewing buddy or via social media, because sewing for our actual real life bodies, rather than the bodies we think we should have or wish we had, is so important for so many reasons. And this episode concludes a lot of tips and ideas that will hopefully make it a lot of use for many makers. So please help me get it into their ears. Right, take care of yourselves until next week and enjoy. As we've discussed time and time again on this podcast, the most sustainable way to approach garment sewing is to aim to make garments that you adore and that will see lots of use over a number of years. That way we make the best use of and truly honour the resources, energy, water, labour and time that went into the fabric and other components. Not everything we make will have this outcome, of course. We'll always end up making some stuff that doesn't get worn as much as we thought it would. And sometimes we want to make things for a specific occasion or for more extreme weather conditions, which means it probably won't get worn a whole lot. But by and large, we should be aiming to create stuff that will see a good amount of use. So how do we do that? At risk of sounding like a broken record, we do that by making things that fit our personal tastes, our lifestyle requirements, and our bodies. But what about when our bodies change? We all experience changes in the shape and size of our bodies over time, to some degree or other. So today, I'm looking into how we can future-proof garment projects to accommodate physical changes, to really help us get maximum longevity from the clothes we make. Everyone will experience their body gradually changing over time. Every body changes differently. However, there are some generalisations that we should expect. As we age, our waists will thicken due to the pads between the vertebrae flattening. This also results in us getting shorter. Our tummies will get fuller, and most of us will experience shoulders moving forward and a slightly rounded back, which may be more or less exaggerated by our type of work or regular tasks. Bust lines drop and often get fuller, and our bums get flatter and our hips get smaller, unless there's also weight gain. That's what we can expect over the course of years and decades. Now, it's improbable that you'll be aiming to make a garment that will last you literal decades. Even if you could make a garment that successfully navigates your bodily changes over decades, the other two factors, what fits our lifestyle and personal tastes, not to mention the degrading of the actual fabric, and those will prevent the garment from seeing decades worth of use. And that's, of course, if you don't just get bored of it. Also, check out episode 64, Sewing Trends More Sustainably, if you haven't already, for more context on realistic expectations around garment longevity. But beyond ageing, there are so many causes of fluctuations in shape and size. And these can make garments uncomfortable or even unwearable for a time, if not permanently, which can be really frustrating if you've put so much time and energy in actually making those garments. These fluctuations can take place over a period of many months, between seasons, during one calendar month, or even during the course of an afternoon. Causes of these fluctuations include weight gain and loss, health conditions, treatments and medication, menstrual cycles, hormonal changes, pregnancy, breastfeeding, seasonal weight fluctuations, various types of bloating, or even just a really epic dinner. I don't believe that we should be punished for having bodies that change by being forced to wear clothes that, at least at times, can feel incredibly uncomfortable. Recently, I had a coffee with a friend of mine, a non-sewer but a real lover of fashion, and she disclosed to me that she internally often felt that she deserved to have her jeans cut into her belly because she wasn't what she considered to be her ideal weight. We both agreed that this was messed up and really sad, and thankfully she's started to unpack these internalised beliefs and dismantle them. But my incredibly awesome and intelligent friend can't be alone, so we've got to fight these kinds of beliefs wherever we sniff them out, starting in our own heads and wardrobes. As we acknowledged a minute ago, all bodies fluctuate in shape and size, and each of us have our own collection of causes. Personally, aside from being the owner of a now distinctly middle-aged body, I always get cuddlier during the winter and just before my period. My body has gone through 2 pregnancies and 2 rounds of breastfeeding, and I experience regular and often random bloating all the damn time, so I am no stranger to fluctuation. Over the last couple of years, I've been consciously working out strategies for making garments that can help me weather these fluctuations. I don't want to have whole sections of my wardrobe completely out of bounds during certain seasons, weeks or days or whatever. Of course, my issues and solutions may be not for you, so I've been doing some research and working out a wider range of strategies for future-proofing garment projects. Everyone's type, degree or tolerance to fluctuations is different, as well as personal style, garment preferences and lifestyle requirements. So please take these ideas as suggestions that may or may not be right for you. Hopefully, you will find some worth applying to future makes. I want to give big thanks at this point to listener Janet, who is so_sister on Instagram, and previous guest Erin Lewis Fitzgerald for prodding me to address this topic. Janet also gave me some great ideas, links and suggestions. So let's get cracking with these ideas and strategies when making each garment type. Let's start with outerwear. So this is going to sound glaringly obvious. Avoid making fitted or very streamlined shapes, unless you're going to include additional ease where you think you're going to need it when you're larger or more bloated. Traditionally, fitted outerwear patterns include between 5 and 8 inches of ease around the hips, which might be enough, but you still might end up feeling a bit stuffed in it when it's fastened up whilst wearing additional layers underneath, so keep ease in mind. Alternatively, there are so many super cool coat and jacket patterns out there at the moment that have a more oversized or cocoon or masculine cut, including lots with plenty of crisp tailoring if that's your vibe. These styles will help you bypass the question of sufficient ease entirely. So ideas of specific patterns that illustrate this. The Richmond coat pattern by Tazuti has a slightly oversized look that somehow seems both kind of classic and on trend. Personally, I'm in love with the recently released flow jacket and coat pattern by French pattern company Atelier Scamy. If sophisticated tailoring and more challenging sewing is your jam, the traveller coat pattern by Bella Loves Patterns will have you looking like a film noir hero. Plus, the cult classic Paper Cut Patterns Nova coat and jacket pattern has a gorgeous, dramatic cocoon shape, but is as easy to sew as it is to wear. As you probably know by now, I love a cardigan for cosy layering. Many cardigan sewing patterns, and knitting ones also, contain sufficient design ease to accommodate fluctuation. My current favourite cardigan sewing pattern is the Jamie cardigan by Ready to Sew. It has buttons, but I usually make it without, but if you did include them, I think that the volume would still be sufficient. However, if you prefer a more streamlined look, consider designs that are entirely free of fastenings and are meant to be worn open. 3 such patterns that can all be made in a range of lengths are Helen's Closet Blackwood cardigan pattern, previous guest Wendy Ward's Kinder cardigan pattern, and Paper Cut Patterns Fjord cardigan. If you're a knitter or have found some very loose knit sewing fabric and you want the warmth of cardigans that fasten and overlap, consider styles that are fastened with shawl pins or brooches, which are inherently adjustable. I've included a couple of links of these kind of closures for sale on the Textile Garden website if you're not sure what I mean. Wrap styles are also inherently adjustable and a great option if you prefer a more fitted or more vintage look. Paper Cut Patterns Corpelia cardi and the Tilly and the Buttons Pearl cardigan are both wrap style patterns. Right, on to tops, dresses and jumpsuits. As you are no doubt aware, there are so many sewing patterns available these days, allowing us to create almost every garment style that you can think of. It's going to be impossible for me to give you options for all the styles of tops, dresses and jumpsuits out there, so I'm just going to give you some tips and pointers and highlight some of the patterns that are on my radar. As with outerwear, if boxy, trapeze or oversized style garments appeal to you, then you have an abundance of pattern options that should help you neatly sidestep the fluctuation situation to a large degree. In recent years, I've seen my personal style shift firmly towards that of an art teacher, and I love the look of a Boxy Woven t-shirt. My favourite patterns for those are the Block Tee pattern by Paper Theory Patterns and the Georgia Tee and Dress pattern by Elizabeth Susan Studio. Both of these feel really breezy in the summer and can be layered with roll necks underneath and cardigans on top for all year round use. If you're a cooler kid than I, you might be into the oversized look for shirts, tops and sweatshirts. 3 such styles are the Outerwear shirt and dress pattern by Paper Theory Patterns, the Ellsworth shirt pattern by Merchant & Mills, or the Mara oversized sweater by Kay Dornbier Designs. A trapeze shape tends to be more form-fitting around the shoulders, but flares out to give an exaggerated A-line shape. Think the trapeze dress and top pattern by Merchant & Mills, the Mintu swing top pattern by Name Clothing, or Christine Haynes' roomy tank pattern. Other features I recommend you looking for when selecting suitable top, tunic or dress patterns are gathering or pleating around the neckline or into a yoke or panel just above or below the bust. Side note, during my pregnancies I found that styles that included these features could take me through to the beginning of my 3rd trimester. There are about 50 gajillion examples that I could give here to illustrate these features, but I'm going to have to restrain myself. So there's the Roscoe blouse and dress pattern by True Bias that has the gathered neckline of a traditional peasant blouse. The Petit Chaussez blouse and dress pattern by Atelier Scamet is one of my favourites and includes enough design elements to make 24 different style combinations. It has subtle gathering that goes into these interesting side panels. Sewing community favourite, the Valley dress and top pattern by Pattern Fantastique, is usually favoured for its dramatic sleeves, but the gathering into the front and back yokes make it the perfect option for those of us who experience bloating and other fluctuations. The Merchant & Mills Florence top and dress pattern is another sewing community smash and has an interesting dipped gathered peplum or skirt feature. The Lisa dress pattern by Tezuti is one that I plan to make for next summer that has gathering into an empire line with a button-up yoke. So Liberated have the incredibly popular Hinterland dress and top pattern that does a similar job, but with optional sleeves. Because size and shape fluctuation is usually most pronounced around our bellies, dresses and jumpsuits that don't have a waist seam at all are a great plan for embedded longevity. And those of us who experience bloating often find it worse or even triggered when we have a waist seam digging in. All of the patterns mentioned above that include a dress version do not include a waist seam. However, if you like some waist definition, you needn't say goodbye to waist seams if you don't want to. As with cardigans, wrap styles give you adjustable waist definition. These types of patterns also create less of a headache when it comes to fitting. The Zadie jumpsuit pattern by Paper Theory Patterns is one of the best-selling sewing patterns of all time for these precise reasons. Named Clothing have just released the Hallie wrap dress and jumpsuit pattern, possibly hoping to recreate the success of their wildly popular Kilo wrap dress and jumpsuit pattern. Other wrap patterns include the Etta dress by Merchant & Mills, the Wildwood wrap dress by Sew House 7, and the Saint Germain wrap dress by Liesl & Co. Plus, there are so many dress patterns available these days that give a fit and flare look without too much actual fit. The Zero Waist Gather dress pattern by previous guest Birgitta Helmesen is a very loose version of this style, whereas the Tilly in the Buttons Lyra dress pattern, which includes an optional waist tie for adjustable cinching, is a more subtle version of what I'm going to start calling faux fit and flare. Dresses and jumpsuits with elasticated waists will give you a closer fitting waistline with additional wiggle room. Look for styles with elastic all the way around, like the Lotta dress pattern by Tilly in the Buttons, the Asher dress pattern by Style Arc, or the Nova jumpsuit pattern by True Bias. Or if you want the appearance of a more fitted garment, but still with the benefits of elastication, look for patterns that are fitted in the front but include elastic just in the back, like Made by Ray's Trillium dress and tunic pattern, or View B of the Lennox boiler suit pattern by Homer and Howes. Dresses and tops with shearing were massive last summer. A DIY example is the Sophia dress and top pattern by Victory Patterns. If you have a sewing pattern that you like with a fitted bodice, consider ignoring any waist shaping darts at the back and try shearing instead, or possibly adding a centre back panel of sheared elastic. Right, the last garment category is trousers and skirts. There are a lot of tactics that you can deploy for making skirts and trousers that can accommodate fluctuation to a greater or lesser degree. Most accommodation for temporary weight gain or bloating will be elasticated or drawstring styles. This probably sounds super obvious, but I have to say it. There are, of course, a ton of these out there, including lots of free tutorials for making elasticated waist skirts without a pattern at all. But some patterns you might want to check out. The Maeve skirt pattern by True Bias includes a number of variations of gathered tiered styles and has both elastic and drawstring at the waist. Threads by Caroline has the Sophia pencil skirt pattern, once again with lots of style variations, which is designed for stable knit fabrics. It could be a great option if you need to look smart for work or somewhere, but you need some extra give. As for trousers, the last 2 years have seen such an explosion of elasticated waist trouser, culotte and short patterns. There is such a wide variety now available in terms of waist height, volume, leg shape and pocket options. Two that I personally love and that I've made multiple times are the Made by Ray Luna pants and the Helen's Closet Arden pants. A couple of additional points about elasticated waistbands. I would really recommend that you be very conscious about how you apply or insert the elastic. For example, some patterns ask you to stitch the ends of your elastic together to form a ring. The elastic then gets stitched to the top edge of the garment, then turned under, and you stitch through the layers. This makes future adjusting a nightmare. Instead, it's much better to make a channel with the top edge of your garment and then thread the elastic through. Always add some additional length to your elastic than you currently need and stitch the ends so that they are overlapping. Then you'll have the option to let the elastic out in the future. And unless you enjoy lots of fiddly unpicking, avoid stitching through the elastic that can give you that fun sporty look if you ever think you might want to let out or tighten your elastic. Ask me how I know about that. Plus, as with dresses and jumpsuits, you can go for styles that are more sleek or fitted in the front, but with some elasticated comfort in the back. Some examples are the Emerson pants and shorts and the Danny shorts and pants patterns, both by True Bias. Also, Made by Ray's Rose pants have some lovely pleats in the front. I'm also really interested in the named pattern Ina trousers and culottes pattern because they very much look like regular trousers or jeans with a fly front, but have a clever elasticated panel in the back. An additional note on styles with elastication in the back only. Consider using buttonhole elastic that allows you to easily adjust the length of your elastic whenever you want. Buttonhole elastic is often found in kids' school trousers and skirts, and it is awesome. Annoyingly, it's only available in a limited range of widths. 25mm is the largest that I've found available. But if your waistband is deeper, perhaps you could add stitching to make 2 channels and run 2 rows of buttonhole elastic through. Amazing Check Your Thread listener and patron Heine Rangi, who is Pig Goes Oink on Instagram, recently created herself some incredible jeans using the Megan Nielsen Dawn jeans pattern. She hacked the pattern to include adjustable elastic through the back half of the waistband. She wisely made those to accommodate for future fluctuations on the run-up to Christmas. So if you decide to use a sewing pattern that doesn't include elastication in the waist, you can consider adding your own. Thinking about how I'd do this, I'd probably advise eliminating the back waist shaping darts, or at least making them narrower, and then making the waistband longer to match. Then you've got your extra width that the elastic can then cinch in for you. If you're looking for only a small amount of adjustability, keep your eyes peeled for patterns with adjustable straps and D-rings or sliders, such as the Mitchell trousers by Closet Core Patterns that has them on the side, or the Square Pants by Stocks Patterns which has them on the back. As someone who gets bloated very easily when wearing garments that dig into my waist, I found that skirts and trousers with facings rather than waistbands are generally more comfortable. However, for garments where a waistband is unavoidable, like with jeans, I opt for denim with a stretch content, then I use a stretch interfacing to stiffen the waistband. This will only work, of course, if the inside of your waistband is also made with stretch denim or another fabric with stretch content. If you line the waistband with a non-stretch woven, then you're negating the point of using the stretch interfacing. Of course, as listener Janet noted in our recent correspondence, makers and tailors of traditional menswear have long been aware that bodies change shape and size in a way that few womenswear designers seem to acknowledge. Tailored men's trousers often include a larger seam allowance at the top of the centre back seam, plus a seam that runs through the waistband, which allows an alteration specialist to let them out if needs be. It's more of a long-term solution, but there's nothing stopping us from introducing this option into our own handmade trousers. A final word on skirts and trousers. My favourite way to accommodate my own fluctuations and prevent any clothing-induced bloating is by avoiding skirts and trousers altogether on some days. On those days, I opt for pinafores and dungarees. Make sure you're choosing styles that can be adjusted, like the Greta dungarees by previous guest Made My Wardrobe, or styles that have no waist seam, like the Helen's Closet Yanta overalls, Waves and Wild's Heyday dungarees, or Jennifer Lauren Handmaid's Ivy pinafore. So all of that was a lot of talk about clothing styles and design features to look out for or introduce. But let's chat briefly about fabric also. Fabric type is going to make a huge difference on the comfort level of your garments. Another obvious point that I have to say is to opt for sewing with knit fabrics or woven fabrics with stretch. Knit fabrics come in many guises, from slinky, liquidy bamboo jersey to stable ponte roma or sweatshirting. Our options as home sewers are incredibly broad. But one word of caution when it comes to accommodating fluctuations. There are two types of stretch. Mechanical stretch, which means that the fabric stretches because of the way that the fabric has been constructed, i.e. knitted. And then there's fibre stretch, which means that the fabric is formed using a fibre, possibly as part of a blend, that stretches. Think lycra, spandex or elastane. Both knit and woven fabrics can have fibre stretch. If the fabric is a blend of different fibres, for example cotton elastane, pay attention to the ratio of those, often presented as the percentage of the stretch fibre included. This will not only tell you how stretchy the fabric will be, but also how good it will be at recovering from being stretched. From the perspective of our topic today, this is really key. A jersey made from 100% interlock, which is a lovely, usually very soft type of knit fabric, will stretch with you on larger days. But it may become permanently stretched out or misshapen pretty quickly and not look so good on your smaller days. Whereas a fabric that contains a good amount of stretch content should ping back to its original dimensions. One final point about fabric: if you are a wonderful bold soul who likes to show off their figure no matter what shape or size they are on any given day, then consider making garments that are made from fabric cut on the bias. As anyone who has used bias binding before knows, when worked with on the bias, fabric has magical manipulatable properties. So dresses, skirts and tops that are made using fabric cut on the bias will inherently have more give than their counterparts that are cut on the straight of grain. Be warned, however, you can't just cut any sewing pattern on the bias to deploy this magic. It's best to work with a pattern that is designed specifically to be cut on the bias. Off the top of my head, I can point you to Tazuti, who have two bias cut patterns, the Sadie slip dress and the Evie bias skirt. But I'm pretty sure that they are two of plenty. So there you go. That's what I've got on the topic of future-proofing our garment projects to accommodate shape and size fluctuation. I deliberately didn't cover altering existing garments because I feel that that is another topic for another day and episode. But if you have any additional ideas for factoring body fluctuations, please let me know via email zoe@checkyourthread.com or Instagram @checkyourthread. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!